Hey, my friend. Tonight we tiptoe back 20,000 years to the bone-chilling Ice Age, where every breath froze into glittering ice crystals under the moon. Picture yourself wrapped in rough animal hide, back pressed against a dripping cave wall, a crackling fire before you. Outside, the wind howls like an ancient curse. Gives you chills just thinking about it, right? And trust me, you wouldn't survive this night. But don't bolt yet. Tonight, we'll see if hide and a tiny fire can turn a frozen night into a peaceful slumber. Hit like, subscribe, and let me know where you're listening from. Swampy Louisiana or chilly Dalat. Dim the lights, crank the fan for its humming lullaby. Keep your heartbeat steady, because every tiny detail, a scrap of reindeer antler, a wisp of smoke, will carry you gently into a frosty dream. Ready? Close your eyes and let history whisper. The north wind swept the vast steppe like a shattered glass ocean, flinging fine snow dust that made the gray ground shimmer silver, dusted with powdered sugar. Its whoosh hiss sounded like a giant flute blown across the sky, clinging to every rock crevice, skimming brittle grass stiffening in frost. Oruk crouched, planting his spear's tip in the snow for balance, his eyes fixed on the pale purple horizon where the sun peaked, a thin crimson sliver like the edge of an orange peel. He needed no messenger. The fierce gusts were nature's annual trumpet, proclaiming the elk herd's southward migration, leaving empty meadows and wind-scoured snow caves. In that moment, he felt tiny, like a wool tuft adrift in the breath of an invisible ancient beast. Oruk's reindeer hide collar stood rigid, its fur facing inward. The grease-soaked fibers hardened over time into a windshield tougher than any modern Gore-Tex. As he pulled it tight around his neck, the scent of roasted fat and old campfires wafted up, oddly warm, as if his tribe encircled a blaze just behind him. At his nape, short black hairs froze into icy clumps, tapping his skin with each gust. He inhaled deeply, the cold air stabbing his lungs like needles. Yet he grinned mischievously, a crooked smirk a modern American might jokingly call a selfie grin mid-blizzard. To Oruk, that stinging bite proved undeniably he was alive, blood still hot, yearning to rise and chase faint animal tracks in the distance. Before him, the gray steppe stretched endlessly, dotted with waist-high grass clumps bowing low, rustling a brittle tune in the wind's sweep. Anyone raised with air conditioning might call this a land of nothing, but to Oruk it was an open book of prehistory. On the thin snow, elk hoofprints sank deep into oval chains, beside drag marks of thick fur, clear signs the herd camped last night, departing when the wind shifted. He knelt, gliding a gloved hand along a print's edge to gauge time. A fresh snow dusting hadn't filled the tracks, meaning they'd left mere hours ago. His grin widened. Soon he and his hunters would set out, resuming the chase programmed into their bones across ancestral generations, not just for food, but for the stories they'd recount by fire each winter night. That thought sparked a strange mirror moment in his mind. If modern folks, zipping along highways in armored cars, sipping cinnamon lattes, stumbled onto this steppe, they'd panic, wondering how to selfie when phones froze in 3 minutes. Oruk chuckled, imagining a polished ice slab as a mirror, his sun-darkened face, bushy brows speckled with snow like sea salt, breath clouding in a wispy fog, a timeless, free filter. You, listening in the 21st century, know that frosty morning when your breath fogs car windows. Now multiply the cold tenfold, double the howling wind, and place yourself in that wild plain to touch Oryx's reality. In fragile silence, he rested a bare hand on his spear's shaft. The long ashwood weapon, pliable enough to flex when thrown yet sturdy against thick bone, felt alive. Oryx traced a finger along the glossy birch resin securing the stone tip. In winter, this natural glue hardened like glass, but spring's sun would soften it for repairs. A memory flashed. His first lesson boiling bark over coals, catching thick resin drops in a giant clamshell, the cheerful popping like roasting popcorn. A meticulous DIY every young hunter mastered before stepping onto the true step. He smirked, shaking his head, musing that sunny SoCal wouldn't teach this. A louder wind gust whipped through, flinging snow into his face. Oryx squinted, cold tears freezing into tiny beads at his eyes' corners. He tilted his shoulder, crouching low, letting the wind slide over his back like water off a tiled roof. His lungs heaved, breaths slow and deep like a meditating athlete, conserving warmth. His leg muscles quivered faintly, an alert, not a shiver. In his mind, an invisible step map unfolded. Wind-blocking hollows, shallow marshes frozen but brittle under weight. Each detail etched brain deep, like your shortcut from parking lot to coffee shop. With senses sharper than any GPS, Oryx felt the land's breath. The crack of thin ice under old grass, the rustle of snow lizards darting, even the faint flutter of ptarmigan feathers at a distant cave's edge. Each sound filed into his auditory library, offering clues worth more than gold. Imagine playing a 3D ambient noise podcast. Eyes closed. Leaves fall to the right. Brakes squeal behind. For Oryx, the step was that live stereo, and survival hinged on reading its soundtrack. Yet not every moment was taut with tension. Humor flickered when he raised his hand to his nose, catching the deer fat scent on his glove, recalling last night's camp when a friend slathered it on boots for waterproofing, joking it was gourmet peanut butter. Oryx snorted, a sound akin to a snowcat's huff, then nudged a ice shard, watching it skid across snow like a vintage frisbee. In a harsh, barren world, humor was soul's moisturizer, keeping hearts soft and eyes bright. The sun climbed higher, painting a pale gold streak through gray clouds. Light hit floating ice grains, turning them into crystalline dust. That gray landscape sparkled like a Broadway stage dusted with glitter. If Broadway hit -30 with a whiff of elk dung. Oryx stretched slowly, joints popping like logs in a hearth. The sensation was sharp, yet sweet. His body warned that sluggishness meant freezing, but heeding the wind's rhythm made him a willow, resilient, enduring. Finally, he pivoted lightly, gazing toward the distant mountains where his tribe's temporary camp stood. Thin campfire smoke curled skyward, threading gray into deep blue. The signal told him to return, report the elk's departure, and herald the long journey's start. Before stepping, he bent, plucking a dry grass blade still faintly green, tucking it at his mouth's corner to test wind moisture and savor its sharp tang. the Ice Age's chewing gum. He exhaled a long white cloud, then planted his spear in the snow, leaving a shallow V-shaped mark, a silent note for any follower. I was here. The wind has shifted. The hunt begins. You, cozy in bed, pull the blanket to your chin, imagining that fine snow as golden dust hovering by your lamp. Let the fan's steady hum mimic the north wind's whistle, and if the AC's chill makes you shiver, smile. Oryx gifted you a slice of the Ice Age, a small lesson that by breathing deep, grinning, and listening, we find. In biting winds, breath is the gentlest lullaby for a peaceful sleep. When it comes to Ice Age weapons, don't picture a gleaming Excalibur on a Hollywood backdrop. Uruk and his crew's spears were rough, stubby, with stone tips just sharp enough not to ruin a baked potato. Yet these held the tribe's survival, and their sophistication lay in each meticulous step of preparation, like brewing a pour-over coffee. Wrong heat, it's bitter. Right heat, sweet notes bloom in your throat. First, the stone. Not any hard chunk would do for a spear tip. Uruk trekked to a dry stream bed where exposed flint veins glinted with glassy grains. Squatting, he used a secondary stone to tap gently, flaking off shell-shaped shards. Each small strike was precise, avoiding cracks across the grain, like a glassblower calmly pinching folds. The sharp flakes, glinting like broken tortilla chips in the icy sun, were dazzling but cut skin on contact. Still, their edge was only as keen as your kitchen knife after 5 chicken chops, enough to tear muscle, not guaranteed to pierce mammoth bone. So Uruk accepted the flaw, compensating with throwing skill and legendary glue. This glue wasn't store-bought. It oozed from birch trees, hardy survivors of frost. In autumn, when early winds were mild, Uruk and 2 elder craftsmen peeled silver-white bark, rolling it into thick tubes, then returned to the cave. There, they dug a shallow pit, lined it with smooth pebbles, set a clay pot over it, placed the bark tubes inside, and sealed the edges with clay, like a mini pizza oven, except the topping was glossy black tree sap. On the pot's lid, they kindled a red coal fire, and the wait began. No thermometer, no clock, just eyes watching flame color and noses sniffing smoke. The heat had to be high enough to separate sap from cellulose but below burning. Too hot, the sap frothed, reeking of char, losing stickiness. A day's work wasted. The trick was the pop-pop. The first sap drops hitting the pot's base, sounding promising like popcorn starting. When it shifted to a dull hiss-hiss, Uruk quickly sprinkled cold earth over the lid, cooling it gradually. The tension was laced with humor. 3 Ice Age men hunched over coals, fur caps damp with snow, brows sweaty, like Texas BBQ pitmasters debating smoke levels. But this was life or death BBQ. Brittle glue cracking at -30 Celsius meant the next spear throw could turn a hunter into wolf dessert. When the lid lifted, glossy black sap flowed, thick as cooled caramel. They scooped it into balls with wooden sticks, letting the wind chill it just enough to touch without burning. Sap lasted mere weeks before cracking, so spear tips had to be mounted fast. Uruk held a smooth ashwood shaft, warmed it lightly over fire, then spread a thin sap layer in its notched groove. The flint tip was set, twisted gently to let glue hug its edges. Finally, He wound dried reindeer sinew around the joint, tightening until the damp sinew absorbed sap and shrank, locking the bond. The process looked simple, but one loose wrap let snow seep in, freezing overnight, birthing cracks. As he worked, Oruk muttered comparisons. Future folk used 2-part epoxy, squeezing tubes, stirring, done in 5 minutes. He strained all 5 senses, fire low, wind favorable, sap just right, sinew moist enough. The only thing unchecked was time, measured by sun's shadow, endless yet unforgiving of a moment's lapse. Once cooled, the spear was balanced. Oruk gripped it a third from the tip, lifting to ensure tip and shaft aligned. A heavy tip dove early. A heavy shaft lost thrust. He shaved wood, added dry leather scraps for counterweight, repeating until the spear lay level like a spirit level. The final step felt tedious, but skipping it left hunters winded, the trek home stretching into a Netflix marathon. Dusk fell, and they hit the testing ground. Snow sparkled under pink light, snow hares hiding in frozen grass clumps, the sole spectators. Oruk stood 20 paces from a log target, rolled his shoulder, inhaled to expand his chest, then snapped his wrist, launching. The spear sliced air with a low whoosh, thudding into the wood, quivering. He checked the glue joint, seamless, uncracked. The throw succeeded, but he tapped the tip, listening for a crisp ring. A few degrees colder, the sound would shift, like a guitar string off tune, warning the stone might split. He noted it, for each degree on the step was an unseen variable. Amid quiet tests, giggles broke through. A clumsy hunter got birch sap in his beard, looking like a hipster overdosed on beeswax. The group roared, humor bursting through the frost. These small laughs kept souls warmer than logs, staving off monotony's chill. If you've ever glued your hand to super glue and yelped in the kitchen, picture this at -25 Celsius, under purple dusk. No warm water to wash, just wind stealing skin's heat. As the sun grazed the horizon, spears were bundled, tips wrapped in sheepskin to prevent chipping. They propped them around the fire, tips held far enough for sap to absorb heat, staying pliable for tomorrow's dawn hunt. Flames licked the wind, popping, casting orange on tired but radiant eyes. In the night's howl, Oruk recalled an elder's teaching. A sharp spear kills game, but a sturdy one saves men. Sharp but brittle, game escapes, men fall. The words carved deeper than tattoos, guiding every move. You might see it as a car maintenance checklist. Change oil, tighten bolts, check tire pressure. For Oruk, each sap drop, each sinew wrap, was a thread dangling between life and the final line. Now close your eyes. Hear the fires crackle like rain on a tin roof. Picture a rough hand sticky with birch sap, its sharp, sweet scent like temple incense wafting through. Feel the shaft's weight, cold brushing your cheek, wind grazing calluses on your thumb. These blend into a soothing, slow song, easing your eyelids into gentle darkness. Tonight, you might dream of standing beside Oruk, twirling a fresh spear, hearing its deep whoosh cut icy air, and smile, realizing sophistication doesn't always gleam. Sometimes it's a sap drop simmering in coals, a steady breath in a blizzard, the unseen resilience carrying humanity step by step through the long frozen road. The night wind slithered through the cave's mouth, sounding like someone dragging a zipper shut, ever so slowly, each metal tooth grinding against its neighbor with an endless hiss, hiss. In that thick, suffocating darkness, Oruk knelt on the stone floor, his leather-clad hands rubbing together to chase away the shivers. Yet the eager blood pulsing through him burned hotter than the misty breath he exhaled. He set a nest of dry grass, laced with white mushrooms, on a flat rock, propped a few small pine twigs around it, and reached for his flint. The Zippo lighter of the Ice Age, striking it against the sharp edge of a stone blade. 2, 3, 4 clashes. Sparks burst forth like miniature fireworks, cascading onto the gray-white mushroom bed. Pop. A soft snap, like a hurried yawn, and a delicate thread of flame arched upward, clinging to the tinder, licking the grass, greedily racing along the dry wood, shifting from pale orange to a blazing amber gold. A flare of light erupted, strong enough to push back the darkness, as if someone yanked open a brick-red stage curtain, unveiling a warm, new world. Everything around transformed in an instant. The gray cave walls glowed pink. Droplets of water glistened like strings of Christmas lights, and the breath of humans mingled with smoke to form a soft orange haze. The cave itself seemed to sigh, not because the temperature rose much. In truth, it only climbed from -26 to -23. The true treasure was the warm halo of light, drawing a tangible line between the safety within and the uncertainty beyond. Darkness, that god who gnaws at the spirit, was forced back a few feet, just enough for Oruk and his companions to hear their own heartbeats without flinching at the thud of a wolf's jaws. Eyes accustomed to the gloom slowly adjusted. Children huddled close to their mothers, wrapped in long furred hides. A curious boy stretched his hand toward the flame, jerking back when the heat grazed his skin. His face scrunched up like an American kid biting into a sour lemon popsicle. A soft chuckle escaped from the cave's corner, from an old hunter, the unofficial referee of every playful moment. No one spoke loudly. A loud voice might rouse a bear or wolf, the sound echoing too far. Instead, they laughed with their eyes, with a nod, with a gentle pat on the back of the person beside them, sparking a chain of warmth that spread with the firelight. Oruk added 2 more pine logs, arranging them in a small A shape to feed the flames, then retreated to the circle's edge. He adjusted the buffalo hide on his shoulders, fur side in, and sank onto a flat rock that served as his chair, feeling the heat seep through the tough leather. The wind still howled outside, but now its wail sounded like a microphone catching a gust in a documentary. Safe, distant, behind a screen. He closed his eyes, savoring the warm air brushing his face, idly wondering if his descendants one day invented sweet, gooey candies roasted over a fire. Who knows, right? This moment would surely be the perfect excuse to gather. The fire grew, the crackling of pine sap popping now and then, like popcorn sizzling on an electric stove. The scent of pine and smoky wood curled into nostrils, blending with the faint grease of animal fat lingering on coats, crafting a unique Ice Age perfume, half wild, half comforting. The warmth melted the ice on Oruk's beard, droplets pattering to the ground. He didn't wipe them, letting them fall, his personal hourglass of thawing time. As body heat stabilized, the tribe slipped into their familiar ritual, silent sharing. Not grand storytelling yet. On the first night, everyone took a moment to listen to the fire's breath, cleansing their minds. Children watched the flames flicker. Adults mentally traced footprints, snow maps, wind hollows, every detail needed for the morning hunt. In this moment, their minds drifted into a pre-dream mode, like scrolling lightly before sleep, except their screen was the fire's dance, free of harsh blue glare. Outside the cave, the first howl echoed faintly. A wolf's cry stretched long, curling through mountain crevices, grazing the stone slopes, then fading as if someone twisted the volume knob to 0. The children flinched. One clung tightly to his mother's arm, but the adults didn't panic. A woman, the old hunter's wife, quietly patted her child's back, pointing to the fire, signaling, "We're safe here." No words, but the child understood and relaxed his shoulders. For the tribe, the firelight was an unspoken pact with the night. They offered roots and wood as fuel, and the night granted them a circle of light, holding predators at an untouchable border. The scene eased into a slower rhythm. Oruk reached for a folded hide, opening it to reveal a few warm, smoked mammoth meat scraps kept toasty inside his coat. He passed a small piece to the old hunter, a quiet thank you for childhood fire-making lessons. The meat's fat, congealed like jelly, melted under the heat, dripping onto fingertips, its rich, smoky sweetness flooding the mouth. Imagine you're listening, picturing your late-night snack as a cold pizza slice. For Oruk, pizza was a chewy strip of fatty sinew, packed with enough calories to keep his heart beating until dawn. Time seemed to stretch around the fire. The flames now shaped a tulip, petals curling up then folding down, casting long shadows on the cave ceiling. Oruk's silhouette on the wall looked like a giant riding waves, while a child clutching his knees became a rabbit propped on its haunches. The shadows were the theater, the fire, the projector, the audience, also the actors. Occasionally, a flame surged high, its red tail flaring, tracing a curve on the stone. Everyone let out a soft ooh in their throats, like American moviegoers gasping at 4th of July fireworks. Gradually, eyes grew heavy, shoulders relaxed. The wind outside persisted, but the fire added its own backup singers. Crack, pop, hiss, a natural lullaby. Oruk propped his spear against the wall, leaned back on a doubled-over hide, and let his eyelids droop. Before his mind sank into dreams, he caught the final spark of a pine log bursting, shooting upward, dissolving into tiny orange flecks, then vanishing, like a flare signaling, "Day's done, time to dream." No alarm clocks, no Spotify playlists, just warmth and synchronized breathing. Within a few feet, old men, children, women, hunters, inhaled in unison, exhaled in matching rhythm. A slow, soft choir, barely audible. Each exhale nudged the flames right. Each deep inhale tugged them left. The fire became a small bird, flapping its wings to the tribe's collective pulse, weaving a conductorless magic of unity. Another howl, fainter, further, marking the wolves' trek across the slope. But the sound now felt like a distant storyteller's voice, adding a pinch of suspense without menace. The tribe curled up, hides draped over shoulders, legs neatly tucked, eyes closed. Fading smoke hovered near the ceiling, forming a fragrant cloud, laced with accidental pine essence, as if meant to soothe. Oruk sighed, his lungs brushing a pocket of warm air, his heartbeat slowing. If you're listening in a cozy room with a soft yellow bedside lamp, try dimming it to the lowest setting, letting shadows creep up the walls, then light a small candle. Watch the candle flame sway, and imagine standing behind Oruk, hearing the same wind, sharing the same smoke. Let your eyelids sync with his. Let this icy tale carry you to a raw memory where humans had no concrete, only courage, fire, and each other. As you drift to sleep, perhaps your air conditioner's hum will morph into the Cao Yuan's wind, and the faint LED glow will become a crackling hearth, reminding you that 20,000 years ago, fragile sparks wove a blanket of safety, lulling humanity through endless nights. Just a bit of warmth, a bit of light, was enough to shift the scales of fate, turning the black night into a home, and a wolf's howl into the gentlest lullaby of ancient wilderness. Animal hide. It might sound like just a decorative rug in a Montana-style log cabin, but for Oruk, it was the finest electric blanket on Earth, no outlet required. He called it his winter insurance, guarding his sleep like an AAA tow truck rescuing a stranded driver on a snowy highway. The material? A massive buffalo hide, twice as thick as the checkered quilt you wrap around yourself while binging Netflix, with two contrasting layers. A dense, furry side turned inward to trap warm air, and a rough leather side facing out, repelling cold wind like a beeswax-coated tin roof. The fascinating part is that this buffalo hide was never tanned like modern leather. No sulfates, no tannins, no lavender scent. Instead, animal fat clung stubbornly to every hair, giving off a pungent aroma like popcorn scorched on a campfire, the thick, unmistakable eau de Pleistocene. You might wrinkle your nose, but that smoky coolness kept water at bay, forming a natural moisture barrier. When breath condensed into mist, the droplets only had time to freeze into tiny ice beads on the surface, never soaking into the fur. Each night, before slipping into dreams, Oruk performed a small ritual. He spread the hide wide, catching the last sparks from the fire, then shook it hard, letting ash fall like reverse snow. Then he stepped onto a flat rock, planting his bare feet on the soft, furry side. The fur enveloped his skin, feeling cold at first, like stepping onto a bamboo mat on a summer night. But within a few heartbeats, warmth surged back, seeping into the gaps between his toes, relaxing his leg muscles. That was his cue to turn, sit down, fold the hide in half over his shoulders, and roll himself up, transforming into a piping hot buffalo taco. If you've ever camped in winter, you know the thrill. Outside, it's minus 10 degrees Celsius. Inside your sleeping bag, it's plus 15. But unzipping even a sliver lets the cold rush in like frenzied paparazzi. Oruk's setup was similar, except his sleeping bag had no drawstrings or zippers, relying solely on the hide's weight and snug fit. He draped the leather edge over his shoulder, nose brushing the furry side, inhaling a deep whiff of fat and smoke, then exhaling slowly through a gap at his chest. The warm breath formed a tiny cloud, instantly condensing on the fur in front, freezing into delicate ice beads. By dawn, the ice thickened into patches, looking like shaved ice topping a cheesecake. But here's the kicker. Flip the hide over, and the inner side remained soft, moist, and warm, untouched by frost. Call it a small miracle or an ancestral dual-phase insulation trick. Picture spreading your red-pink IKEA wool blanket by an outdoor fire, the night dipping to -30, only to wake up and find it frozen into a stiff board. Wool soaks up moisture, ice embeds in the fibers, and the structure collapses. But buffalo fur, coated in oily lipids around each keratin strand, rejected water's grip. No wonder modern material science mimics those lipids in waterproof jackets. Yet 20,000 years ago, Uruk was already sporting the Gore-Tex Living Edition. Sometimes, in the dead of night, a northern gust whistled through the cave's entrance, shrieking like someone flung open a giant fridge door. Uruk subtly shifted the hide, pulling the furry edge over his nose, leaving just a small slit at his mouth for air. His breathing slowed, stretching long, pulsing in rhythm with the wind. Children nestled between adults, each wrapped in thinner deer hides, often scooting closer to the grown-ups' buffalo hides, like a game of hide-and-seek with warmth. Uruk never minded. Their shared body heat wove a massive blanket fort, where temperatures mingled into a private microclimate, a 25°C oasis amid an icy ocean. Even in the driest, bitterest cold, the fat on the hide stayed pliable, like lightly melted beeswax. Some nights, when moonlight flooded the cave's mouth, Uruk woke to see a thin sheen of ice coating the hide's outer side, sparkling like the armor of an ice-age knight. He tapped it gently. The ice shattered into pieces, clinking onto the stone floor. Beneath that frosty armor, the inner side of the hide still hugged his body, warm and slightly damp, like a slow cooker stew simmering all night. To a newcomer, it might seem like magic, but the secret was simple. Fur faced inward to trap air, leather faced outward to block wind, and the fur's slight downward slope guided melting ice away instead of letting it seep in. The hide's color wasn't uniform. Some patches were dark black, others reddish-brown, with golden dry edges. Each hue told a story. A singed mark from a spark leaping off the fire, a dark stain from deer blood rubbed in, a lighter spot worn smooth by snow. To Uruk, the hide was a silent journal. A burn mark recalled last winter's hunt, when snow fell like rice grains, and the group danced around the fire after bagging the season's first buffalo. A dried deer bloodstain brought back a breathless chase under the northern lights. Modern folks have Instagram feeds. Ancient hunters had firstagram etched on hides. A gentle humor surfaced when Uruk spoke, his voice a low murmur in the fireless dark, joking that the hide was a heavy-duty odor filter. Each morning, he folded it, flipped the furry side out, and aired it in the breeze, letting the pungent scent dissipate. He'd say, "This is nature's air freshener, no power button needed." Listeners chuckled softly, some yawning, eyes stinging from smoke, but all agreed. The buffalo hide's potent aroma, stronger than a cinnamon milk candle, was the scent of survival. Rarely was this all-purpose blanket used only for sleep. By day, when hauling meat, they slung the hide over their shoulders as a backpack, tying the corners and dragging it like a sack. During icy rain, it became a mobile awning, puffing up like a peanut shell to shield the group. Even crossing glacial rivers, the hide wrapped tightly around the body, its fatty layer repelling water to keep inner clothes dry like a raincoat without the plasticky rustle. The animal hide, no exaggeration, was a mobile invention library. Sleeping bag, jacket, tent, backpack, windbreak, even a ceremonial mat when needed. Every evening, before drifting off, Oruk checked the hide's edges, ensuring no folds faced the wrong way. Misaligned creases could compress the fur, reducing its ability to trap warm air. He smoothed the fur in one direction, like an American tucking in hotel bedsheets to avoid lumpy wrinkles. Caring for the hide was caring for sleep, and a good sleep meant the strength to hurl a spear far the next day. If you're listening now, you might glance at your phone to check how much video time remains. Don't worry, Oruk's fire still burns, with a few more beats of the story to go. Try pulling your blanket up to your chest, feeling the ordinary cotton fibers. Then imagine it gaining a few pounds, softer than velvet, radiating warmth like a dairy cow curled beside you. If your cotton feels too light, you're getting a free dose of blanket envy, a playful jealousy of our ancestors. But instead of restlessness, let it be a lullaby. Give thanks that they wrap themselves in pungent fat, breathing slow, so today you can lounge on a sofa and find city winters a mere joke. As the last firefly-like embers flickered, Oruk tugged the hide's corner over his ears, subtly adjusting so his shoulder nestled into its curve, head tilting slightly toward the fur. His heartbeat merged with the distant wind, warmth cocooning him, the vast grasslands shrinking into a sturdy chrysalis. Outside, the night frost summoned ice, droplets hardening into a crystalline shell around the blanket. Inside, human body heat pulsed with its ancient rhythm, like a mini generator fueling hope through the long night. And so, that unscented hide was the reason we, earbud-wearing descendants, sit here tapping likes and dropping comments. Before flannel shirts and electric teapots, smoky buffalo fat kept human hearts ablaze through every ice age. Sleep well, tucked in and thankful, under whatever blanket you have. Just don't forget to send a silent nod to that ancient all-purpose hide. The sky hadn't yet broken. The first light only tiptoed at the cave's entrance, and Oruk's eyes flickered open in the dim, grayish haze of the Ice Age's signature temporary home. This cave wasn't deep or grand, just a hollowed-out stone chamber, eroded by glaciers, its ceiling so low that a grown man standing upright would graze his forehead on rock. At first glance, it might seem like a nightmare for claustrophobes, but for the Great Lakes tribe, this cramped space was a gift from nature. Hours of burning fire each night meant the smoke couldn't fully escape skyward, pooling instead into a thick gray veil that hung like a gossamer scarf across the cave. The acrid stench of burning pine resin, mingled with sizzling animal fat, stung the eyes and sometimes scratched the throat raw. Yet, that smoky haze was an invisible steel blade, driving away forest mosquitoes, deer flies, and tiny bats craving warmth, all forced to scatter, leaving the humans to a deep sleep undisturbed by any buzzing. Oruk sat up, sniffing the cooled smoke. It conjured images of a modern urban sidewalk grill, where American diners elbow each other under a tin roof in summer, waiting for sizzling skewers. But instead of honey-glazed barbecue, his breakfast was air-laced with the oddly warm scent of ash. He stretched, his arm brushing the damp, smoky ceiling, dislodging a few soot-stained droplets that pattered onto his fur-clad shoulder. The children still slept, curled in a corner, their breaths rising and falling in perfect unison. Their mothers gently tugged deer hides higher over their feet, a rhythmic, serene gesture, like an American family tucking blankets over kids in the back of a caravan at dawn. The morning ritual was far from grandiose. Oruk and the older hunters grabbed flat stones, scraping the soot caked on the walls. Each night's fire dressed the cave in a coat of black grime, thick as chalk dust on a classroom blackboard. They shaved it carefully into leather pouches, collecting a fine powder like cocoa. The task sounded trivial, but this soot was a versatile treasure. Modern folks slather on SPF 50 before hitting the beach. Their ancestors dipped fingers into the ash, smearing a line across foreheads and noses. The black soot absorbed sunlight, shielding skin from snow-reflected rays that could burn, while dulling the face's gleam, tactical war paint in every sense. Plus, those lines served as a badge, like today's "I voted" stickers. A sooty streak meant you were awake, ready to hunt. No streak, you were still on rest shift. A natural cosmetics-based time card system. But let's not forget the flair. Elders often added a small circle around their horizontal line, symbolizing the rising sun. Younger hunters favored 2 streaks trailing down their cheeks, looking cool. Think about it. You might credit Paris for inventing the catwalk, but the first runway was a smoky, low-ceilinged cave, where prehistoric people strutted from fire pit to entrance, rocking the trendiest soot designs of the Ice Age. Who says Sephora invented makeup? After the cosmetics session, they inspected the cave's structure. Last night's wind had shifted, blowing fine snow through the entrance, leaving a smooth white ridge on the stone floor. Oruk used his spear shaft to carve a shallow trench, guiding any daytime meltwater out. The low ceiling, despite its cracks, showed signs of thawing ice. He smeared animal fat to seal them, preventing drips the next night. A temporary home, yet maintained with more care than a city apartment. Air filter swapped, leaky roof patched, all in simple, hands-on motions. No professional maintenance crew required. As daylight outside grew, the hanging smoke thinned, revealing last season's charcoal sketches on the stone walls. Zigzag lines for glacial rivers, paired dots marking mammoth migration routes, twin spirals noting emergency shelter caves. A giant, free travel map, updated each hunting season with glossy black strokes. The tribe didn't write with letters, but the walls were Google Maps 1.0, refreshed yearly with charcoal. In the morning, as kids learned to read the symbols, they touched the walls, smudging their fingertips with soot. By noon, they were sunproof, an accidental sunscreen layer already in place. The cave's air was stifling, so Oruk chipped away loose rocks at the ceiling's highest point, carving a smoke vent. A small act, but it ensured the next night's smoke had an escape, like a kitchen range hood. Imagine installing a stovetop exhaust fan. Here, the fan was a stone ledge catching the breeze, running forever, no electricity needed. Another minimalist, effective move, survival's golden rule for nomads. When it was time to move, They shook out their hides, smothered the fire's embers, and spread ash over the wood base. The cold ash formed a carpet, blocking drafts from stirring dust. If carbon footprints were measured back then, Oruk would have earned a green badge. Reusing old gear, using smoke as pest control, and ash as compost for barren soil. Modern folks chase #sustainability hashtags. He lived it because there was no other choice. Before leaving, they blocked the entrance with dry pine branches, shielding against wind and trapping heat for a possible return. The pine, still sticky with resin, released a sharp, oily scent that deterred predators. Sometimes, the aroma was so strong that wolf packs mistook the area for a marked territory, steering clear. Nature's own territorial perfume, bottled in pungent tree sap. You might wonder, why not use portable hide tents, more open and airy? They did, but tents suited open grasslands. On rocky slopes where winds swirled, caves were the sturdiest forts. Half-meter-thick stone walls didn't just block gusts, they reflected the fire's heat, creating a warm rebound. Winter nights dragged like a horror movie with no credits. Stone walls dulled the wind's howling echo, granting an unbroken sleep. As the group hefted their leather packs, ready to depart, Oruk stole a final glance. The smoky haze still lingered faintly. Sunlight piercing it turned the mist into a golden pillar, almost dreamlike. Floating soot particles sparkled, like an upside-down rainbow sketched in charcoal. The scene was both raw and poetic, a symphony of light, smoke, and stone. He bent to scoop a fallen soot flake, smearing it on his cheek. A reminder. This cramped, stuffy cave was a mountain's gift, proof of humanity's boundless knack for adaptation. The smoke's scent clung to his clothes, trailing him on the journey, a distant signal. Wherever he caught that aroma, he'd know a safe haven was near, where smoke curled under stone ceilings, where kin, fire, and hope promised the night would pass in peace. You're lying on a memory foam mattress, HEPA filter humming, the router's soft lights blinking gently. Try lifting your head, closing your eyes, and breathing slowly, picturing the lingering pine ash scent from a campfire's end. You might feel lighter, sleepier, because that primal mechanism, smoke as a shield against pests, still lurks in your genes, lulling your nervous system into safe mode. If you chuckle at comparing a New York apartment to a smoky cave, let it out. The laugh shakes your chest, clearing stale air, easing you into smoother sleep. And as night closes, you'll quietly thank the black soot your ancestors scraped, because it helped them survive to pass this story to us. Heads on pillows, before the phone screen dims and you drift into a smokeless dream. A single mammoth hind leg weighed nearly as much as Oruk, about 80 kilos, dwarfing the massive gym barbells Americans flex with on TikTok. The moment they lashed ropes to its Achilles tendon and dragged that furry dinosaur thigh back to camp, the group knew tonight's dinner would be a culinary marvel and a forearm endurance test. First, they laid thin stone slabs over scaly snow, fitting them tightly like a chessboard, creating a smooth field-cutting board to keep ice grit out of the meat. The snow below bit at their toes, but the thought of the colossal calorie haul headed for their stomachs made the cold forgettable. Oruk knelt on one knee, gripping the worn handle of his spear, its stone blade sharp enough to slice hide but sturdy enough not to snap. He started with a long cut along the hamstring, peeling back the thick skin, tough as a pickup truck mat, revealing a creamy white fat layer, then the deep red muscle beneath. Mammoth meat wasn't the bright pink of Angus beef. It was dark, closer to Merlot wine, so dense that flickering firelight only shimmered on its surface like wet iron ore. Each slab he carved was as long as a forearm, so heavy it made the stone board clatter as it landed. After every slice, Oruk flicked his wrist to shake blood from an old scar's seam, chuckling softly, his laugh mingling with misty breath, like a Texas chef carving brisket at a Saturday noon cookout. As the first meat piles stacked high, an older hunter built a drying rack. 3 ash wood poles formed an A-frame teepee with a crossbar for hanging strips. Below, they kindled a 2-tier fire, glowing coals buried deep, topped with fresh pine branches. Pine sap dripped, hitting coals and vaporizing into greenish-white smoke, fragrant with the scent of gum resin mixed with wet wood. Nature's own liquid smoke. The smoke curled around the meat, caressing each fiber like clouds wrapping a winter mountain at dusk. A clock? Unnecessary. They timed by the sky. Add coals when Mars rose past the ridge. Flip the meat when the North Star hit the cave's zenith. 18 hours straight, the fire never died. Past midnight, snow fell lightly, and the thick, bow-shaped smoke cloud shielded the coals from wind, holding heat steady like a pitmaster tending a low and slow grill. Mammoth fat dripped onto the coals, sizzling, evoking bacon frying. Except this was a cut of survival, not a side for a diet latte. Occasionally, sparks shot upward, sticking to a drying buffalo hide, leaving tiny singed yellow dots, smoke souvenirs for the all-purpose blanket. As dawn dozed in the valley's depths, the rack wafted an aroma so rich even the north wind swerved, carrying the scent of seared fat through mountain crevices. Oruk prodded a piece with his spear shaft. The outside had tightened, a deep chestnut brown, but a finger's press sank, hinting the inside was half-cooked. He sliced a test strip, laid it on his tongue, letting the smoky flavor meld with melting fat like butter. The sweet iron of wild muscle, a lingering fatty finish, warming his brain. 1 2-finger-thick slice packed enough energy to fuel a heart through a freezing night, equal to 2 extra whip hot cocos from a Manhattan corner shop. But here, no sugary notes, just pure protein and lipid essence. Seasoning? No pepper, no fancy pink Himalayan sea salt. Instead, each person pinched a bit of clean snow, freshly fallen, untouched by ash, popping it into their mouth before biting the meat. The snow melted, chilling the tongue, cutting the richness, like guzzling a zero-sugar soda to balance a triple cheeseburger. Joking aside, try a keto diet at -40 degrees Celsius and see how long you last. For their ancestors, keto wasn't a lifestyle. It was biological reality. Carbs were as rare as Wi-Fi in an ice desert. While the meat dried, dripping fat collected in a concave stone, cooling into creamy white tallow. Women mixed this with fine ash to make soap for washing hands, also smearing it on kids' lips to prevent chapping. Prehistoric high-end lip balm. Modern Americans drop cash on minty lip balm. Oruk just tapped the tallow stone, broke off a berry-sized chunk, and rubbed it on, smoky-scented, outlasting beeswax by miles. As the sky traded inky purple for pale pink, the feast began. No table, just flat stones arranged around the fire like fast food diner stools. Oruk carefully lifted a mammoth steak the size of a pizza, setting it before the elder first, an ageless rule of respect. Cool outside, hot and moist within, smoke still swirled like invisible gift wrap. The elder tore off a piece, chewing slowly. His stained but strong teeth crushed the springy fibers, meat juices pooling at his mouth's corner. He nodded slightly, the silent signal for the tribe to dig in. No chatter, just the sound of deliberate chewing, snow pattering on hides, and distant wind. Each person gripped their piece with bare hands, the fat lubricated enough to keep meat from sticking, forming a natural glove against the cold. Now and then, someone bent for a small snow clump, let it melt in their mouth, then took another bite, their face lighting up like a jogger sipping Gatorade mid-run. Oruk ate his share faster, fueling up for night watch. He felt warmth bloom from his stomach, spreading to his fingers, then flushing his cheeks. His breath no longer trailed thick white clouds. In skin-cutting cold, that sensation beat any electric blanket. Blood, sensing high calories, sped up, burning internal fat, turning the body into a portable furnace. Imagine swallowing a 4-patty burger with double cheese, but instead of calorie guilt, you feel joy. Each fat molecule a ticket to survival. Nearby, little Ina clutched a sinew strip as thick as a guitar strap, gnawing, squinting with a grin as the tendon snapped back against her lips. Her mother tore it smaller, showing her to wrap it around a stick and roast it like a marshmallow. Funny how campfire gourmet isn't new. When the sinew charred, collagen melted, and Ina nibbled the greasy end, eyes half closed, content like a modern kid licking a warm caramel lollipop. After the first round, they hung the remaining meat higher, letting cold winds dry it into natural jerky, stockpiled for days when prey vanished. The initial smoke had seeped in, tinting it a cinnamon brown prettier than any honey glaze. No fridge, no vacuum seal, but the combo of dry cold wind, pine smoke, and natural fat salts preserved it for weeks. A paleo beef jerky vending machine. The fire dwindled to coals. Oruk buried small stones in the ash, warming them for leather pouches used as heat packs. Leftover tallow was poured over his spear shaft, coating his tools with a rust-proof sheen. NASA engineers would have eyed mammoth fat as rover axle grease. When the sun finally peaked, the air still -20, everyone felt full, warm, and slightly drowsy, like a tripled Thanksgiving dinner glow. They smothered the fire with ash, packed the jerky, rolled their hides, and prepped to track migrating deer. Before leaving, Oruk scooped a handful of snow, tossing it onto the hot coals. Steam rose, carrying the scent of seared fat skyward, a smoke signal thanking the mammoth for its sacrifice. For a moment, the aroma spread, evoking a suburban backyard barbecue where neighbors lean over asking, "What's cooking?" The only difference: here, fail to cook, and you freeze. Cook well, and you live another week. And so, the mammoth meat dinner, no BBQ sauce, no keto salad, was a moment when the community's breaths wove into white smoke, crafting a nutritional blanket to shield them in an icy ocean. When the next night arrived, just 2 handfuls of meat, some clean snow, and memories of last night's fire were enough to warm hearts, spark smiles amid howling winds, and ease them into sleep without calorie worries. even as the cold outside could crash a modern iPhone weather app. The snow began to crash down the moment the fire faded to glowing coals, as if someone in the sky suddenly swung a giant skillet full of white powder. The rustling sound of snowflakes hitting the stone walls grew thicker, then turned into a relentless tapping, the drumbeat of a winter storm. Oruk, seasoned by countless whipping winds, still hunched instinctively, as if offering his shoulders to bear the entire sky. He pursed his lips, scanning the cave, the buffalo hide, the meat-drying rack, the pile of soot-scraping stones, all still in place, but the tribe buzzed with an unusual restlessness. A stormy night wasn't the time to curl up alone under a blanket and drift into peaceful dreams. Instead of every man for himself sleep, they flipped the furry sides of their hides outward, spreading them in a tight circle like a giant, shaggy brown donut. The children, chasing snow shadows outside the entrance just an hour ago, were tucked neatly in the center, their small bodies curled, hands clutching knees, eyes wide at the storm's howl, mistaken for wolves, yet sparkling with excitement for the stories to come. The adults, hunters, women stitching with bone needles, even the elder who rarely lifted a finger, leaned outward, forming a living rampart, so any wind sneaking through crevices met a warm, flesh and blood wall. In minutes, the human hearth took shape. Each person's breath rose, pooling into a misty cloud in the circle's core, then curling up to the low ceiling, forming a dome of warmth to fend off the creeping cold. Once the circle settled, Oruk sat slightly off-center, head tilted toward the mammoth haunch on the drying rack, where the last coal sparks still popped. He laced his fingers, inhaled deeply, exhaled a plume of white, and raised his low voice, the one kids secretly called Forest Wind. No one prompted, but the cave fell quiet. Only the snow's chaotic battering, like a rock drummer's riff, clashed with the steady rhythm of the tale about to unfold. When the sun still hid beneath clouds of ice, Oruk began, "White owl, the spirit cloaked in fur bright as winter's moon, glided low over forests thick with pine sap's scent." Every child knew this story by heart. Every phrase matched last year's, identical to other stormy nights. Some mothers knew it so well their lips silently mouthed words before Oruk spoke them. But that familiarity was what shed their tension, like snow melting silently on fox fur warmed by heat. The kids hugged their chests, blinked, then felt eyelids grow heavy with the cadence. White owl soared through mountain passes, meeting a steaming silver river. Oruk's voice was even, round, not rising or falling dramatically, but gliding like a lullaby's hum. Outside, the wind grew fiercer, hurling snow against the cave's mouth with sharp slaps, like a careless mailman tossing newspapers. But the adults' backs sealed the gap. Each cold flake hitting their hide-covered shoulders paused, slid off, harmless as a foam ball. Their breaths wove into a warm fog, then dissolved into the air. 3 exhales, 4 heartbeats, another story beat. White owl, wings weary, perched on a pine branch, calling to North Bear, "Where's the sun?" Bear only grinned sleepily, saying the sun hid behind human dreams. If the tone felt steady, long, repetitive, that was its power. Like the train wheel clatter, the primal brain linked to safety and stability. The youngest in the circle, little Ina, still clutching a buffalo sinew strip as a doll, slowly loosened her grip. Her eyelids closed willingly, not forced. Her soft hair spread on the buffalo fur, gathering faint moisture, then drying slowly from the group's heat. Across the circle, an old hunter sensed a shift in wind pressure, inching his forehead closer to the wall to block a new gap. He didn't interrupt Oruk, just reached for a log, wedging it to seal the draft, keeping the story's rhythm unbroken. When the wind shrieked higher, Oruk leaned closer to the hide, dropping to a whisper, forcing listeners to tilt their ears, deepening their trance. White Owl flapped, stirring a breeze soft as a promise. The final sound lingered, stretching like a thread tying hearts to the snowflakes outside. Ever lain on a sofa, hearing your mom read Jack and the Beanstalk for the 30th time, eyelids drooping right at the beanstalk's climb? That hypnotic effect, it turns out, was patented by the Ice Age Sleep Institute 10 millennia ago. The story too repetitive? That repetition shifted the brain's stress to known tracks, letting the danger-sensing region clock out. The brain released just enough serotonin, lulling the body into a hypnotic orbit. In another minute, most in the circle wouldn't hear the words, only the wind's backdrop and their heartbeats echoing, like an ocean pressed to a seashell. Sure enough, within a few story loops, steady breathing rippled through like gentle waves. Oruk, sticking to the script, casually lifted a dry log, gently stirring the ash, sparking soft crackles, not to flare the fire, but to add ASMR campfire pops to the lullaby. He glanced at the circle. Kids curled asleep, adults' eyes half closed, shoulders still braced to hold the fort. He smiled, lowered his voice further, reaching the part where White Owl found the sun beyond the final slope, gently tapping its beak to bloom light, then paused, leaving the tale unfinished, like a DJ fading out a track, letting listeners write the ending in dreams. In that moment, the wind outside abruptly switched, blowing backward, scattering snow from the entrance, granting a rare hush. The circle held its breath, unaware. No howls, no stone clatter, just the fire's faint simmer, pulsing warmth, and the smoky scent of hides. Oruk rested his chin on his knees, feeling his heartbeat slow, letting his eyelids close with the story he'd spun. If you, on a memory foam bed, earbuds in, reach this part, picture the hunter's shoulders shielding you from the gale, the heavy hide like a weighted blanket hugging your chest, the steady tail replacing a clock's tick-tock. You might breathe slower, your pulse sinking to a new depth. In your bedroom's dimness, you may glimpse White Owl gliding across the ceiling, guiding your soul to a new sun, a dream warm enough, safe enough, to wake tomorrow with the faint smoky trace of kinship lingering on your skin. Dawn on the Ice Age steppe didn't burst into vibrant hues like a calendar painting. It only cracked open a faint purple streak, hazy as ink bleeding on paper, signaling time to break camp. The light couldn't warm fingertips, but it was enough for Oruk to spot the smoldering ash pits breathing thin smoke around the dying fire. The first task of a migration day was always packing the fire. Odd as it sounds, this ancient trick was more vital than choosing a route. No fire, no cooking, no warmth, no light to fend off predators when dusk fell. Oruk pried apart a pair of old deer antlers, curved like oversized soup ladles, flipping them concave side up. He scooped the hottest ash from beneath the glowing coals, gray mounds hiding red-hot flecks like marshmallow roasted embers, and poured it into the antlers, then packed it with dry, aromatic herbs. The herbs, sharp with oily zest, cradled the smoldering heat, a backup battery for fire. He tied the ash-filled antlers with a leather cord, slinging it across his back. With each step, the coals would shift, sipping oxygen through the herb gaps, staying warm but not flaring. Modern engineers craft lithium batteries. Their ancestors invented ember packs. To the west, the glacial river emerged under powdery snow, its milky surface cracked in a jagged grid, like a mirror passed through 7 owners. The tribe lined up single file, children in the middle, the strongest guarding both ends. Oruk stepped first, his reindeer hide boots crunching the ice with a soft "curt," then a drawn-out "scree-scree" as he slid half a hand's breadth, like polystyrene scraping glass, a sound to make the fussy shudder. Their boots were simple, fur side out, snow clung to the hairs, compacting into a grippy sole. Inside, soft, dry moss, a memory foam insole. Each morning, swapping fresh moss was like changing socks. Free shipping, carbon neutral. The ice below groaned, crack crunch, like an old wooden frame in a snowy night. To modern ears, it's a crisis alarm. To Oruk, it was a radio broadcasting the path. A sharp, dry snap echoing far meant a small horizontal crack. Adjust your angle. A low, wet rumble meant an underground stream. Shorten your stride. Their pace crawled so slowly you could count heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, step, 1, 2, 3. Pause, then step again. Tedious? Maybe. But that tortoise rhythm saved them from teetering on a fractured ice slab, drifting to a no-return horizon. Behind, the elder planted markers, pine branches, tips whittled sharp, stabbed at angles to point the safe path. Google Maps 1.0 in mini totem form. Those following glanced at the stakes, adjusting steps without a word. When whirlwinds bent the markers, they knew the ice there was wind-scoured, thin as smoked glass, so veer right, take the longer but thicker route. The group's zigzagging footprints traced a child's pencil scrawl, learning letters, etching memories onto the ice. Half a mile in, the shy sun cast a pink glimmer on the ice. Under furry soles, snow crystals crunched, grating yet oddly lulling, especially after 300, 400 repeated steps. The brain, locked into a steady rhythm, releases endorphins, coaxing calm. So, despite skin-slicing winds, the tribe sank into a walking meditation. Eyes fixed ahead, feet on autopilot. Ever jogged on a treadmill, lo-fi playlist humming, mind floating? They lived the natural version, no music, just boot scrapes and heartbeats, a dual metronome guiding the trek. At a rise where the ice fractured into small dragon-scale patches, Oruk signaled a halt. He knelt, ear to the ground, catching the deep murmur of water. The ice, thinner than a knife blade, hid under snow. Pressing forward would turn it to a raft. He twirled his hand, tracing a circle in the air, the cancel sign, then led the group toward clearer, older ice, stacked thick with milky tea air bubbles trapped inside. More bubbles, stronger ice, a lesson from their forebears, equal parts science and art. At his side, The ember pack stayed warm, occasionally wafting herb-scented smoke past the next person's nose, masking animal musk. When the wind shifted, the coal's piney tang made a boy smack his lips, recalling last night's roast. He didn't whine for food, just grinned, knowing noon would bring mammoth-fat patties warmed in ash. Simple joy, like a burger emoji popping up at a drive-thru, except this menu was survival, not convenience. 10 miles later, the snow eased, ice giving way to a rocky limestone slope. It didn't speed them up. Furry boots snagged on sharp edges. Oruk signaled claw mode, wrap sinew cords around boots, wedging flint flakes underneath, turning soles into mini crampons. The boot's scree turned to dry clop-clop, each step like a wooden mallet tapping a table. The dazzling ice trail behind faded into a silver ribbon, a serpent they'd crossed, now distant, like a highway seen from a plane. By midday, with the sun high enough to glint off the markers behind, Oruk called a rest. They gathered clean snow, dug a conical pit, set a stone pot, and unpacked the still glowing embers, puffing until they flared red. The fire reborn, small as a birthday candle, but worth more than car headlights. No one spoke loudly. Wind still lurked, ice still cracked somewhere near the horizon. They chewed mammoth jerky, sipped melted snow, and aired their boots, letting mossy dampness steam off, not just drying, but masking foot scent from prowling martens. A young woman dipped into cooled ash, drawing a circle on her daughter's forehead. A reminder. The sun's always ahead, even under gray skies. After a brief pause, the march resumed. Step, pause, listen, adjust. A silent dancer's rhythm on a crystal stage. You might call it sluggish, but that caution was their primal GPS. Ears, eyes, and souls sensing vibrations. Chase scenic routes like modern tourists, and they'd book a one-way ice drift tour, no return. By afternoon, the dawn's purple softened to peach gold, spilling over dark, mossy slopes. Oruk looked up. Far off, a faint smoke column, a new shelter cave, rose like a beckoning finger. The tribe quickened within safe limits, hearts beating faster than the morning's pace, feet steady. Somewhere in their brains, visions of warm fire and smoked meat tugged a long dopamine thread. When the last ice crack vanished behind, Oruk untied the ember pack, checking its coals still glowed. He smiled faintly, not toothy, but enough to warm the minds of those worn by the flat trail. Fire lived, meaning tonight's story would go on, meaning tomorrow they'd have warmth to sketch new charcoal maps. No matter how tedious the migration steps, each soft boot scrape wrote the tribe's name in the Ice Age journal. We passed here. We listened to the earth breathe. We're alive, and we'll tell this tale on nights to come, when ice melts to rivers and coal's scent rises, lulling you. Yes, you wrapped in cozy blankets into a long, safe sleep. The forest night tightened with wind, a crescent moon fumbling behind the mountain's ridge. The camp sunk in a taut, parchment-like stillness. At one corner, by the smoldering coal bed, Oruk alone stayed awake. He squatted, a deer hide draped over his back, face flushed from the fire's glow, eyes fixed on a rough clay pot half buried in gray ash. This was his Ice Age smoke lab, where he brewed universal glue from birch bark for the hunt ahead. If Silicon Valley gleams with LEDs and keyboard clatter, Oruk's Birch Valley lab shimmered with flickering flames, sharp ash scent, and the crisp pop of embers. The pot he used bore no glaze, its surface pitted and uneven, more like an antique market trinket than high-tech gear. Yet it was fired tough enough to withstand all-night heat without cracking, deep enough to hold melting bark without spilling. Earlier, Oruk had packed it with silver-white birch bark, tight rolls like parchment scrolls, sealed it with a clay lid, and smeared it shut with moss-mixed mud. Hot ash blanketed the top. Glowing coals ringed the sides, turning the setup into an impromptu, slow cooker. The first phase was silent. Flames crackled outside, ash pulsing orange-pink, but the pot stayed mute. Oruk sat so still that fine snow dusted his hair, sparkling silver. A passerby might think he'd dozed off, but his ears were taut as bowstrings, awaiting the telltale sound of sap separating. This materials engineer had no thermometer or pressure gauge. His tools were a honed sense of sound and smell, forged through hundreds of fire-watching nights. About an hour in, a wisp of smoke leaked from the pot's edge, stinging his nose. Oruk sniffed carefully. Early birch smoke carried a faint sweetness, laced with oily sharpness. A good sign. The sap inside was melting, pooling into black oil. He slid a long stick in, nudging coals from the pot's side to ease the heat. Too hot, and the sap would ignite, turning to ash, wasting the night. Too cool, and the bark would shrivel, sap hardening uselessly at the bottom. Everything was gauged by scent and sound. Smoke should be subtly sweet, not acrid. The pot should hum with soft, steady pops, like young popcorn, not a single loud bang. The smoke stung his eyes. Oruk squinted but grinned. "That's the tune, old friend." From the ash's edge, he gingerly sprinkled more coal dust, tending the heat like a chef tweaking the flame for a gourmet risotto. His mental recipe was simple: 4 parts fire, 3 parts ash, 2 parts breeze, 10 parts patience. Silicon Valley's labs might need hundreds of sensors. He needed only smoke's aroma and grit. Time passed. The crescent moon drifting clear of the ridge, dark tree shadows stretching like raven wings. The pot began a rapid tick-tick, the music Oruk craved. Water and oil bubbles bursting, sap thickening into droplets. Those black, viscous drops, scientifically betulin, pooled at the bottom, cooling into a glossy tar lake. When set, this sap would harden like cold caramel, pungent as parking lot tar, but a nail-sized blob could glue a stone spearhead to a shaft, waterproof, cold-proof, and even antiseptic for bandaging cuts. This boring substance was the thread from flint tools to the nano age, binding grand works with patient monotony. Midnight neared. Oruk cracked the lid to check. He slipped a thin ash twig to the bottom, scooping sap, watching it stretch into a glossy black thread. Perfect viscosity, clinging to the wood without dripping. He resealed the lid, reburied it in ash, letting the sap settle. No rush to scoop. Cooled sap forms a skin, easier to roll. He stepped to the forest's edge for fresh air, clearing the sharp scent from his nose, then returned. The camp slept, Only faint children's snores from the cave and the wind's hum over the hill. Back at the pot, he tipped it, ash scattering with soft clicks. Inside, the sap was thick, dark and glossy, smelling of sweet smoke and black pepper. He twirled a stick, rolling the sap into strips, pulling gently. It stretched into silky threads, shining like asphalt in summer. Each strip he wrapped in broad leaves, packed tight like candy bars. These glue sticks would trail the hunters all season, patching spear shaft cracks, sealing broken knife tips, soothing blistered toes, even heating to purify water. Birch sap's natural phenols killed germs. A multi-tool material, born from seemingly useless bark. Harvest done, Oruk tidied the ash, revived the coals, draped his hide over his shoulders, and stood gazing at the black sap's sheen reflecting dying flames. He exhaled a white plume, chuckling inwardly. If there were an invention fair, I'd snag first in super-adhesive tar. He pictured future analysts flashing slides, calling it self-synthesized betylene polymer, when it's just smoked sap from an old clay pot. The thought widened his smile, realizing human ingenuity often isn't about speed, but slow simmering. Before sleeping, he broke off a tiny sap piece, chewing slowly. Bitter, sharp, with a faint piney sweetness, natural antiseptic for a sore throat. His tongue tingled, throat warmed. He left the fire tent, letting wind strip the smoke scent, then slipped into the sleeping hide circle at camp, tucking the sap roll under his head. The night breathed cold, but the thought of tomorrow's spears, glued firm, eased him into light dreams. You, reclining on memory foam, might catch a whiff of cedar from an essential oil diffuser. But picture a night where, instead of vanilla candles, you're lulled by birch's sharp sweet smoke and the embers' sharp pops. Your AC dial can't mimic that. Just rewind 20,000 years. Sit by Oruk, noting each smoke wisp curling into the dark. And if you bite a scorched gum piece, don't spit it out. Call it a handcrafted antibacterial snack, Birch Valley Labs legacy. Close your eyes, hear the coals shift, smell the ripening sap, and sleep will come slow but solid, like betylene glue, binding your mind to warm peace in an icy storm. The night snow shimmered like a granite tabletop dusted with sugar, so cold each crystal clinked faintly against its neighbor. A crescent moon hung half-hearted, too thin to illuminate, casting only a milky streak across the flat white expanse. Yet Oruk felt his back slick with sweat, warmth from his draped hide rising and steaming before his face. He curled his fingers, gripping the 3-meter spear shaft. Its birch tar-glued stone tip gleamed with a pale green glint. Wolf eyes. They came from upwind, where pine ridges streaked with shadow. First 1 pair of eyes, then 2, then 5. The gray wolves moved nearly silent, their strides as soft as mist sliding on glass. Hunger-hollowed bellies, snow-dusted fur, muzzles high, nostrils flaring rapidly. They arced in a crescent, trotting while scraping paw prints into the snow, tightening the half-moon closer, closer. Their gait swayed like a pendulum clock, patient enough to wait for exhausted prey. Oruk knew charging to split the pack was suicide. He raised a hand. 3 hunters, broad-shouldered Dorn, swift-footed Teha, calm Boru, instantly understood, peeling from the fire to step sideways, forming a defensive half-circle. Children and women retreated to a snow mound, backs pressed together, silent as stone. The clearing became a mute theater. No heavy breaths, no crackling wood. Only heartbeats thudded fast, muffled under layers of hide. The snow's surface was slick, an ice rink. Each of Oryx's steps sank deep, reindeer hide boots digging in to avoid slipping. Still, the thin ice under snow could betray. One misaimed spear thrust, a shift in balance, and he'd tumble, a perfect target for wolf jaws. So, instead of a cinematic one-stab kill, the encounter became a staring contest. Wolves prowled the circle's edge. Hunters pivoted slowly, eyes locked on gray shapes. The distance held taut as a guitar string. Occasionally, a wolf bared its teeth, moonlit fangs flashing, growling a steamy grrr. Oryx answered with a sharp shout, not long, not echoing, like a stone cracking frozen water, then brandished a smoky torch. The torch wasn't a blazing flare, but a pine stick wrapped in dry birch bark. When lit, its sap erupted into a pungent, acrid scent, thick gray smoke coiling. Wolves, nose keen, caught the birch tar's bite, sharp as burning rubber, and froze, heads lowered, growls stuck in their throats. Not quite fear, but enough hesitation, like sniffing a tempting dish laced with soap. Boru twirled his spear, its stone tip grazing ice with a clink, a metallic sound startling in nature's wooden chorus. The swipe flashed a narrow gleam, hitting the lead wolf's eyes, forcing a blink and a half-step back. The pack stirred, backs arching, tails stiffening. But they didn't flee. The snow too deep, the cold too harsh, the warm breath of two-legged prey too alluring despite the smoke's sting. Time didn't tick seconds, but dripped thickly. Oryx heard blood pounding in his ears. Thump, thump. Oddly synced with the wolf's three-step pause rhythm. He blinked slowly, ensuring his feet gripped solid snow, balance steady. Behind, Dorn drew a long breath, sweeping his torch wide, painting a larger ring of stinging smoke. The smoke caught the wind, swirling into a murky fog, shrouding the human circle like a gray curtain freshly hung. The standoff dragged. A test of endurance. Who'd outlast? Wolves waited for a slip. Hunters banked on the alpha quitting. Oryx's legs numbed. He shifted weight to his toes, coaxing blood to his heels, staving off cramps. Eyes barely blinked. Blinking lost track of motion. Lips dry, he licked them, tasting bitter birch tar from the smoke. The tang sharpened his focus. Suddenly, a wolf broke rank, darting at an angle, claws spraying icy dust. Oryx's spear snapped down, but as he lunged, the tip skidded on frost-coated ice, veering off target. Boru, close at his side, swung his torch, its flame catching the wolf's eyes. It froze, barked hoarsely, spun back, sliding like a football player overshooting a tackle. A heroic one-shot? Hardly. Just a chain of small, dull reflexes, luck, and shoulder-to-shoulder teamwork. After that probe, the wolves crouched, tails tucked, heads low, ears half-trusting. The smoke thickened, laced with campfire ash, muddling their noses. They whined softly, sneezed, pawed their muzzles, signs of scent overload. Minutes of stillness passed, then the alpha yawned wide, turned, and loped into the dark. The pack followed, no heroic howls, just the faint crunch of snow under claws. Only when the last green eye winked out did Orruk exhale, resting his spear on the ground. Sweat chilled his back, but his mind blazed clear, like after a long chess match. The children left the snow mound, eyes wide, mouths itching to barrage questions, but Teha's whisper cut through. "Night's not over." Meaning, stay vigilant. Victory here wasn't cheers, but surviving a few more hours. The hunters rebuilt the fire, adding pine branches. Flames roared, fresh smoke billowing. The pungent tar scent lingered, claiming the space. Orruk leaned toward Dorn, forcing a grin. "Tomorrow, we pack stronger coals." Dorn shrugged, eyes twinkling. No gym needed. Muscles and heart got their workout. They didn't slap backs in grand celebration, just passed a strip of jerky around, chewing slowly, letting the fats savor calm nerves strung tight as bowstrings. In the new firelight, Orruk eyed the wolves' dotted paw prints beyond the circle, scribbled pencil marks around a child's drawing. Each track told a tale of chance and nature. A missed thrust, a slip, the torch's hiss, stinging smoke, small, dull fragments, pieced just right to keep life's shape intact. A hunter could turn prey with one misstep, or flip the game with a whiff of acrid flame. As the fire steadied, Orruk sat, back against stone. His legs trembled faintly, muscles unwinding after clenching too long, but his pulse slowed, settling like fading embers. Far off, fine snow veiled the wolf tracks, erasing them like a magic eraser on a chalkboard. Dawn would show no trace of the night's tense duel, just wind, smoke, and a few spear-tip scratches on ice. Dull? Perhaps. But that stubborn dullness, not flashy stabs, cradled the tribe's lives in the night's silent box. So by morning, all could still breathe to tell the tale, lulling far-off American eyes into sleep, safe and quiet as the snowy skirmish faded to oblivion. The final night of the hunting season always carried a mood both relieved and wistful, like a jazz trumpet fading in a roadside bar as the bartender nudges patrons to call their ride home. The steppe wind still whipped snow in patchy gusts, but in the hearts of the Great Lakes tribe, a new task beckoned. Update the social network. No late-night campfire jest. For Orruk and his kin, etching drawings on cave walls was as solemn as you balancing a quarterly ledger, their worth not measured in likes, but in lives saved next season. The painting cave lay deep in an ice-crusted mountain crevice, its entrance so narrow you had to crouch and crawl, like navigating a frozen water slide tunnel. Once through, the space opened into a high stone vault, its ceiling studded with mineral-glistening stalactites, reflecting fat lamp light like a silvered mirror. Boru lit the lamp, carefully pouring deer tallow into a hollowed stone, setting a moss wick, and sparking it. The flame didn't blaze, only glowed golden, wrapping each step in a small, warm halo. The scent of sizzling fat filled the air, half savory, half acrid, yet all inhaled deeply with satisfaction. This oil lamp aroma signaled the winter council's opening. From a cave corner, Orruk hauled out a pigment basket. Crushed red ochre, pulverized campfire charcoal, golden ore dust scavenged from valley veins. He poured each powder onto a flat slab, drizzling deer fat to knead them into sticky, ancient acrylics. His brushes were rabbit fur tufts tied with sinew, soft as felt-tip pens for details, and stiff mulberry fibers, springy, for rolling broad color swaths. Each tool bore cracks, but Oruk stroked them, chuckling softly. Countless vital bulletins had flowed from this worn kit. On the main wall, a smooth gray slab awaited its post. Oruk first sketched a broad curve, Mammoth's back, in red ochre. No delicate artistry, but thick, solid, like a traffic warning stripe. Beware mega freight obstacle. Next, he dabbed charcoal, flicking round dots for thick fur, highlighting the wind resistance mammoths generated when turning. Along the beast's flank, Oruk drew slanted spears in a curved formation, the exact tail cut tactic that worked this year. Beneath its belly, he slashed 4 zigzags, cracked ice terrain by the eastern lake, where a novice hunter nearly fell through, a warning for the next generation to dodge disaster. Children sat huddled behind, eyes round as headlights, watching lines take shape. Soft ooze escaped as Oruk added a white streak, mimicking snow dust trailing bison herds, or when he blew gold dust, making migration paths sparkle, like highlighting a route on Google Maps. At each step, he paused, cleared his throat, and narrated. The lead mammoth fell here. Or, wind blinded with snow here, hug the edge. No one took notes, but young brains archived every stroke, so a year later, they'd wield spears, reading the wall like old group chats. Some might ask, why not paint glorious scenes, heroes brandishing spears, blood hot as fire? Truth is, art here served data. A faint ice crack was worth 10 bronze victory statues, pointing to a spot where, if forgotten, you'd hear a snap and plunge into black water. Oruk knew this, so each stroke was clear as a bullet point. He shrugged, joking. For showing off, try the other cave. Some young guys drew 6-fingered hands, real spooky. Here, we're building a digital billboard. When the main wall was done, he shifted to the eastern face, adding weather signs. 3 wavy stars for unseasonal north winds, a sliced spiral for mini blizzards spitting snow. No art school taught these symbols, but every hunter read them fluently, like spotting a burger emoji and knowing it's the dining tab. Outsiders might think the murals were mere decoration, but next village's scouts, stepping in, would glance once and plot a wind-safe route. A young girl, Ina, sharper at tracking than sewing, was allowed to add the final touch. A soft red curve for southern deer herds. The adults watched silently, nodding. The deer might not come, but marking early ensured someone would watch next year. Thus, the wall became a 24/7 news feed. Anyone with knowledge could update. Visually dull, all lines, circles, triangles, but in collective memory, each sign sang of survival. Finally, the elder stepped forward, charcoal in hand, framing the mural in a rectangle, then swirling a dot in the top right corner. A verified mark. This prevented random scribbles from muddling the system. Joking aside, even the perilous Ice Age needed fake news filters. The cave chuckled low. A fleeting ease passed, then faded, yielding to the weight of duty, heavy as a spearhead. As all stepped back, Exhaling to admire the finished mural, the fat lamp had burned half, its flickering shadows animating lines like stop-motion film. Oruk moved to douse it, but paused, letting the golden light crawl over the mammoth's back, climb the spears, and melt into the blizzard spiral, a timeline coiling around memory. He closed his eyes, picturing next season's youths standing silent, torches trembling, reading each sign like group texts, then opening eyes with new certainty. The lamp dimmed. The cave sank into velvet dark. Outside, wind swept, but deep in the stone, that cold bulletin board cradled the painter's zeal, faintly radiating spiritual warmth. Oruk packed his tools, tucking fur brushes, ochre dust clinging to his hands. He licked a finger. Sour earth, fatty tallow, a natural mineral boost for sleep. Leaving the cave, he eyed the star-scarce sky, thinking, snow will be thick tomorrow. Best stay near. That call, he'd return to Mark with a heavy cloud sign at the entrance, because the best social network keeps the next in line standing right, on time. For now, hide slung over shoulder, earth paint scent wafting in the breeze, Oruk smiled. The wall held its news. The rest was for next month's storms to test. And you, dozing by a screen, breathe deep. Picture that ancient fat lamp's flicker on stone, reflecting countless wordless posts. Your pulse slows, eyelids weigh, and the dull black ochre lines lull you to sleep. Humans still doggedly tell survival's tale night after night, from fire-red ice caves to cozy 21st century bedrooms. When the early spring sun trembled over the distant mountains, the ice blanketing the hunting season began to crack in delicate crow's feet, then shattered like overfired glaze on an old clay pot. The crack, boom, echoed along the great river, humming in the wind, snapping every mind in the Great Lakes tribe to attention, like a compass needle quivering. All knew the signal. The time of ice breakup, when the river split into countless drifting mirrors, dazzling yet deadly. At a glance, the water glittered under sunlight, a banquet of shattered glass stretching endlessly. But one misstep, and the mirror became a slick escalator to the dark current below. The night of the sorrowful tale brought no fierce wind, only a thin mist curling across the river like a harmless veil draped lightly over the ice carpet. Little Ina, Oruk's youngest cousin, ever mischievous, trailed his father to check fish traps near the bank. The traps sat at the first runoff vein, where ice was thin and hollow, like bread slathered with too much butter. Adults warned to stay back, but Ina, brown eyes blazing with curiosity, leaned forward, fur boots edging out, mouth poised to call Oruk and boast of a trap brimming with fish. No one heard his brag. Instead, a sharp foot, crisp as a finger snap, rang out, and the ice beneath him collapsed, sliding offshore, sweeping Ina like a paper boat snatched by a gusty night stream. No one screamed. No frantic sprint ensued. The tribe's first reflex was to blow the horn, a hollow reindeer antler etched with red-dotted patterns. Its low, drawn-out wail curved through the mist, forlorn amid the ice's crackle, yet it was their oldest remedy. They believed sound waves could guide the lost back, or at least trace where the current carried. 3 horn blasts, resounding, overlapping, echoing. Only the clatter of ice pebbles answered, dragging on endlessly. From that moment, a 3-day search ritual began. 3 days blending into distinct grays: ash gray, lead gray, charcoal gray, no sliver of blue sky. Oruk and the hunters paddled reindeer-hide canoes along the broken ice, tapping drifting slabs with wooden poles, hoping for a dull thud signaling deep water where a body might hide. They cast nets, hauled ice chunks to shore, sifted powdery snow for any scrap of cloth, hide, or sinew. Each dusk they returned to camp, clothes soaked, lips bruised purple, and silence stretched like the blank space between two carved lines on a cave wall, laden with meaning, wordless. No one wept loudly. The tribe knew too well that ice breakup was nature's stern law. Staring at death was like staring at the sun, blinding, painful, but dodging it only lost the path. Yet each night, as the fire flickered, Ina's story seeped out in slow, short drips, like water from a stone roof. They spoke softly, adding a detail. The water's grip outmuscles two lean men. Or, once ice splits, no one outswims the undertow. Small fragments built a complete tragedy, but also a warning pillar for the next generation. After the third search day, the flag of ice breakup didn't close, but the living's exhaustion forced them to resume migration. Before leaving camp, the tribe entered the painting cave, where the mural bulletin awaited new tidings. A blank spot between the mammoth herd and snow whirlwind was chosen for Ina's mark. Oruk mixed ochre with deer fat, adding crushed charcoal, crafting a muted red-brown, distinct from hunting glyphs, not too vivid to shame. He drew a whirlpool, 3 coiled loops, mapping the sinkhole at the river's bend. Beside it, a small sketch, a child's silhouette with forearms shorter than an adult's. At its feet, a wavy line for thin, jagged-edged ice. No tears, no abstract blood streaks, just the cold dispatch of geology. Yet all watching swallowed hard, for that whirlpool didn't just claim Ina, it sucked away the season's laughter, leaving a silence enduring as unthawed ice. Once the symbol dried, the elder traced a charcoal border, then pressed a spread hand to the wall, the inked palm sealing the rite. That sooty hand would fade over years, but the red whirlpool would cling to stone, warning that some river cracks must never be rushed. Future children might not know Ina's name, but seeing the small figure by the vortex, they'd grip their parents' hands tighter when breakup's roar returned. Leaving the cave, night fell, mist thick as a funeral shroud wrapping the cliffs. The fire burned low. No one told the white owl tale. Instead, they listened to distant water shattering ice, the river grinding on, indifferent to human loss. Oruk, leaning on stone, occasionally drew the horn, blowing a lone, lingering note. No hope Ina would hear, but the sound pierced the mist, grazed the water, bounced back to the cave. A muffled dirge. Later, they'd say the horn at ice breakup sounded like a far-off ship's foghorn. When someone teetered near water, that echo would spark in memory, halting their feet. The next day, as the tribe pressed on, the river behind erupted into a jagged spectacle. Massive ice slabs collided, rearing like mobile walls. They walked the high bank, hearts tightening as wind carried the ice's growl. A low rumble unlike wolf howls or blizzards, a sound declaring nature always held an unguessable card. Oruk silently vowed, "Humans aren't the center. We skirt the edges, noting system flaws for those who follow to patch." By afternoon, the new camp rose, mist fracturing under twilight. Oruk shaved a spear shaft, birch tar smooth under his blade. No grand turmoil stirred within. Only small tweaks took root. Stake warning markers sooner when ice cracks, so sinew barriers for children's play zones. Those tiny fixes were time's glue, threading survival across generations, unbroken by a single careless slip. Night fell around the fire. Storytelling resumed, but slower, softer, each pause long enough to hear snow fall. Ina's tale, a few words each night, wove into a misty lullaby. Not rousing panic, not yielding to oblivion, only priming instincts to stay vigilant. In the hide's warmth, grief dissolved into smoke, clinging to the cave roof, rising, joining countless other tales of earth and sky, reminding that loss, too, works quietly, stitching caution's thread into humanity's sleep. So, as you close your eyes on a warm bed, the horn's whisper through mist lingers, slow, sorrowful, but safe. The crescent moon hung in an inky purple sky, a silver sickle lost in deep velvet. Its faint light grazed the steppe, shattering into countless phosphorescent flecks, making the snow glitter like sea salt at the bottom of a cocktail glass. In that serene stillness, the Great Lakes tribe's cave transformed into a ceremonial auditorium where the steady thump-thump of a hide drum pulsed, warm and deep, resonating like bass flooding a Manhattan club's wooden floor at 2 a.m. The rhythm's keeper was the shaman, a hunched elder, sparse white beard fluttering in the night breeze, eyes cloudy as river pebbles yet glowing eerily when embers cast their orange-pink sheen. In his right hand, a ritual staff of bare shin bone, tipped with 2 curved fangs. Each time the staff struck the drum, the fangs quivered, gleaming with old grease in their crevices. The drum's pulse pushed sound through every chest, slowing even Oruk's breath, his heart usually quickened only by beasts, emptying his mind, drawn to the low, resonant core. The shaman traced arcs in the air with his staff, leaving faint trails like fading sparklers. He began to speak, his voice a gravelly blend of grit and crackle, fraying in the wind but clear as ochre dots on snow. The white bear spirit, God as vast as a mountain range, sleeping beneath eternal ice, each breath stirring gales, each sneeze unleashing swirling blizzards across the steppe. The children huddled, eyes wide, swallowing each word, though Oruk caught their sly grins. They'd heard this tale too often. Yet every telling sent shivers, for the shaman's voice didn't just narrate. It commanded a colossal subwoofer booming inside their breastbones. His words weren't long-winded scares, just circuitous enough to let imagination inflate. He explained, White Bear despised human chaos, but hunt with restraint, honor breeding seasons, and the god would slumber peacefully. Dare to skin a mother bear or harass a female seeking a mate, and White Bear would rise, shaking snow from its back like a dog shedding water, turning storms into whips for the irreverent. The drum's thump landed on shaking snow, hooking listeners' hearts. The cave seemed to shudder, snow on the ceiling stirring, pattering down, a stage effect outshining any concert hall's smoke machine. It sounded superstitious, but anyone who'd glimpsed a grown male bear from afar understood. This ecological law was no game. Pregnant females ate less, moved slowly. Killing one erased an unborn litter. The tribe wove this into myth so children memorized it before they could wield spears. A dry biology lecture? The shaman dusted it with mystic ochre, added ancient electronic drum beats, crafting an education program so gripping TikTok couldn't compete. As the tale peaked, the shaman paused abruptly, tilting his head to listen. Outside, a gust roared from the western slope, hurling ice dust through stone crevices, wailing long. He smirked. The wind was live verification for his story. Raising his staff, he slowed the drum, softening it, like a heartbeat easing in meditation. The dramatic aura faded, yielding to quiet reflection. Without cue, adults rested hands on children's backs, and Oryx set his spear aside, letting his eyelids grow heavy. The story was familiar, but its repetitive rhythm was a lullaby, repeated to soothe, repeated to etch into neural folds. The shaman exhaled deeply, flicking embers from the drum's edge, then shifted to what we must do. No hollow morals. He listed briefly. Stop setting traps near bear dens when snow first melts, letting mothers lead cubs down slope. Burn dry grass around early red bloom fields, young bears' favorite snack, when leaving, to avoid luring them to barren zones. It sounded like a practical solutions slide, but wrapped in myth, it sank in smoothly. The kids didn't zone out. They nodded in sync, memorizing, "You don't want white bear sneezing." The fire dwindled, the drum stilled, and the shaman propped his fanged staff against stone, nodding as if thanking an unseen bass line for its service. He admitted even he trembled retelling it, having once seen a storm snap tent stakes after someone stole bear bile. That confession made adults shiver. Memory pushed the tale beyond myth into half-memoir. For the rites close, each stepped forward, dipping fingers in ash-mixed fat, tracing a small diagonal mark on their wrist. A pledge to honor White Bear. The ashy grease shielded against wind, but more crucially, it reminded flesh that the snow outside wasn't just cold. It blanketed a nocturnal god, demanding humans tread lightly, breathe softly. The sooty slash looked unpolished? Perhaps, but call it a prehistoric Pura Vida bracelet, valued in winters survived, not likes. Embers faded to coals, the drum was upturned, the bass dissolved, giving way to slow, deep human heartbeats, like a 432 Hz meditation track. Children slumped against mothers, breaths puffing faint clouds, while Oruk leaned back on his hide, eyes half closed. In the fire's dying glow, he pictured White Bear curled under ice, belly rising and falling, white fur tinged yellow by time's ochre. The image didn't scare him. It brought strange comfort, knowing a god wove into nature's cycle, setting clear rules for humans to follow. And those rules, with the drum's thump-thump faintly echoing, would lull him to sleep. So, you, cozy in an air-conditioned room, if you catch the snow shovel scraping the roof or the heater rumbling, picture White Bear on patrol, sparing you a midnight wake-up under a collapsed ceiling. Clutch your blanket, breathe deep, relax. That ancient bass hums somewhere under your bed, its thump-thump blending with your pulse, rocking you into a safe snow dream, because you, unlike those who hunted breeding bears, learned to respect the god in the snow. Each time Oruk knelt to kindle tinder, he reached into the leather pouch at his belt, pulling out a flint stone, its curved face smooth as a clamshell. The stone wasn't bright or sharp-edged, even bearing a long crack across its middle, yet he cradled it like a treasure rarer than any fresh spearhead. It was his father's pocket will, pressed into his hand the night the old man broke his hip slipping on an icy marsh under a sky ablaze with aurora, no healer near. In his final breath, his father gripped his son's hand, pushed the stone into his cold palm, and whispered the last words his chapped lips could muster. "Keep fire." 2 short words, no time for farewells, but enough to seal a legacy contract, passing the duty of fire-making to the next in line. Since then, whenever Oruk set dry grass on an ash bed, he turned the flint to its worn groove, placed the fire steel his father had smoothed, and struck, clack, clack, unleashing fine sparks. He wasn't the tribe's fastest, but every strike hit true, wasting no spark. He'd say, "That's Father guiding the ark." As the first flame flickered, he murmured, "The old fire burns on in my hands." The words were soft, meant for his ears alone. He didn't want grand ceremony, for true legacy lived in small, repeated acts, no fireworks needed. To outsiders, it looked routine. Pick stone, strike spark, blow gently. But in Oruk's mind, a memory album flipped open. His father's squinting grin when Oruk's first practice spark stung his ankle, or his mother's half-laughing grumble when their wet grass fire tests choked the air, yellowing the hunting dog's fur. For him, the flint was a solid-state drive, and striking it was the password to unlock files. No clack, no memories. No memories. The chain of legacy snapped. In the Ice Age, with no written word, memory was the only Google Drive, powered by brain synapses and backed up by tales retold through nights. Each family had its files, a stone, a spearhead, a smoke-stained sinew cord, living USBs passed to young hands when elders fell. Today's campers flick a lighter, blue sparks crackling, minds on selfies with orange glows. Oruk, striking flint, patched updates to the ancestral cloud, backing up his father's memory into the fire about to rise. The tribe revered these living files, never snatching or borrowing without return. A family's flint was sacred, untouchable as a bank pin, only shared in bonding rights with explicit consent. Each deer breeding season, families gathered around shared fires, comparing sparks, swapping tips, strike low to dodge wind, or mix birch bark in tinder for longer flares. It resembled a weekend survival skills workshop, the fee just smiles and jerky strips. Sometimes the stone cracked anew, chilled by cold or dropped carelessly. Oruk didn't fret. He'd apply hot birch tar, sealing the fissure, then warm it to set. It was like firmware patching. Preserve the old core, add a protective layer. The glossy black mend marked time, a version 2.0 sticker on a laptop's back. Others saw the scars and knew. The bearer had stumbled, but reinforced, the stone stronger. When the fire blazed, golden tongues licking the cave roof, Oruk patted his spear shaft and touched the stone in his pouch, sending silent thanks. The habit spread to the kids. Ina, before vanishing, had gathered pebbles, clumsily chipping copies, though her sparks fizzled half the time. Now, missing Ina, Oruk clacked the flint, pinging Ina's file, still here, still here. Still. You might laugh. A chipped rock versus an 8-terabyte SSD? But think. An SSD wilts in damp, while this stone rolled through blizzards, crossed floods, and held firm like his father's tales. Science confirms. Flint's silica locks structure. No tech can crack it. More than that, each spark triggers dopamine, a mental software update, reminding Oruk he wasn't alone on time's axis. In a blizzard, as fire dimmed, Oruk wondered, "If I fall to ice, who'll take this stone?" He thought of Ina, gone, then, and glanced at Teha, tiniest, sleeping soundly, and smiled. When his own breath froze in a final mist, he'd pressed the stone into her small hand. No will needed. Fire, like DNA, knew its path. Dawn broke, ice floes glinting purple. The tribe prepped to move. Oruk touched flint to tinder. Clack! Sparks flew. New fire bloomed. His father, Ina, and generations past flickered in that flash. The legacy rite was done. No ink or notary, yet stronger than any contract. The memory chain held. The lineage flowed. And you, flicking a gas lighter on a weekend campout, do you pause to recall who taught you to cup the flame from wind? If so, congrats. You've logged into humanity's eternal drive, where fire doesn't just warm flesh, but welds yesterday, today, and every tomorrow. That night, the camp lay still, a frozen gem in the steppes' heart. No rustling spears, no wind scattering gray smoke, only embers smoldering under thick ash, glowing red like a cat's half-closed eyes. Oruk, who usually tended the fire until the last spark died, relented earlier than usual. He drew his flint stone, checking his legacy by habit, then tucked it back, assuring himself the fire's warmth would hold through the night beneath the ash. He retreated to his buffalo hide, propped against the wall, and let his ears stand guard where eyes rested. At first, his ears caught only the distant wind, faint as a city apartment's humming AC. But as his eyelids drooped, that backdrop faded, and a finer layer of sound rose, like a phone screen dimming at night, sharpening your sense of shadow. First came a crack, snap, small as a breaking needle, from the right stone wall. Baked by weak daylight, then stretched by deep night cold, the wall's crevices cradled ice that pried them apart with tiny bursts. Each crack lasted a split second, but rang in the cave like a melon's rind splitting, as if the stone whispered in ancient Morse code. Between those solitary snaps pulsed a plop, plop. Thin water drops from melting roof ice, falling to a flat stone at Oruk's feet. The gap between drops was near perfect, about 30 heartbeats. One drop shattered, the next chased, chaining an endless 1-1-1 sequence. If recorded, the sound's graph would be a flat line, parent to all lullabies. Listening long, Oruk found himself counting. 1, 2, 3, plop. Then 1, 2, 3, plop. The rhythm synced his breath, chest rising and falling at the drop's pace. Modern cardiologists might call it coherent breathing, boosting the parasympathetic system, but Oruk knew no terms. He only felt his eyelids sag like pebble weights. After 50 drops, his ears snagged a third sound. Swish, swish. Barely there. Snow outside the cave's mouth rolled down slope, old layers crumbling, new ones sliding, slow but steady. In modern terms, it mimicked wool clothes brushing a leather seat. The sound reminded Oruk that beyond, the white delta shifted like a giant conveyor, too slow for eyes to catch. Far from alarming, it evoked a boat's gentle rock, waves sinking with the stone drum in his chest. Soon, the ice itself, emboldened by a patient listener, staged a fuller concert. A deep fissure in the wall groaned a heavy rumble, low as a subwoofer droning down a hall. No aftershocks, no tremors. It only stirred the cave's air, tickling the fine hairs in Oruk's nostrils. He didn't flinch. He'd learned to sort vibrations. Too deep meant far. No threat. An elder's adage flashed. If the sound lingers but doesn't repeat, the stone's just stretching, not collapsing. So he dismissed the bass, refocusing on the trio, snap, plop, swish, the night's steadfast players. In that moment, Oruk realized this dull sound sequence echoed his father's sleep trick, tapping an empty drum frame, letting low notes hum in a child's chest, pausing, waiting for the heartbeat to reply, then tapping again. The order wasn't chance. Humans, from pre-myth to modern labs, have borrowed steady rhythms to steer nerves into slow orbits. 21st century archaeologists, unearthing ice graves, found hand-worn, smoothed percussion wood, proof of prehistoric metronomes. Oruk's sounds weren't boring. They were an 18,000-year-old lo-fi girl playlist. Across the cave, the youngest child stirred. Oruk cracked an eye, seeing her head on her mother's arm, lips smacking in dreams. He counted 7 more drops, another crack, a plop, a swish. The girl stilled, her breath joining the sound's pulse. He smiled, a half-lip curve no one caught. Nature's lullaby machine had just proved its worth. You, curled in blankets, listening, can try the modern version. Kill TikTok, close the laptop. Listen, maybe a kitchen faucet leaks, dripping sparsely. Outside, wind hisses through a door crack. The fridge clicks as its coils flex. Aligned right, those 3 sounds outshine any ASMR video. The challenge? Sure. Your brain craves 1.25x dopamine hits, but give it 3 minutes. It'll do what a million years of evolution wired. Sync body rhythms with the world, release melatonin, cool your palms, and boom, you're out, just like Oruk's about to be. Back in the cave, the snap-plop-swish played on, but the embers cooled, coals graying. Warmth pooled low, thickening an air blanket, muffling human senses. A bat, sheltering in a stone crevice, quivered its wings. Its ultrasonic squeaks escaped human ears, deepening the night's density. That silence, oddly, wasn't empty, but a concert hall of micro-sounds. Nearby heartbeats, hide cloth brushing breathing skin, damp hair steaming faintly. The quieter it grew, the more the white noise filled ears, smoothing stress wrinkles in the cortex. Oruk let the flint slip from his hand. It fell to the hide, soundless. His eyes closed, frosted lashes stuck lightly. His last conscious thought traced the sounds. Snap, plop, swish. They told no epic, offered no new data, but held a subtle survival secret. Slow, continuous, no sudden breaks. Later, physiologists with EEGs would see brains hearing dull noise, slide from beta to theta waves. Oruk needed no electrodes, just the drip of water. As night neared dawn, cracks stilled as temperatures steadied. Snow ceased sliding. The roof shed its last drop. Sounds thinned to threads, but human nerves had locked into rest mode. Muscles loosened, hearts beat soft. Dawn would spark new warmth. For now, prehistoric and smartphone-wielding brains shared a library. Boring sound sleep. So, tomorrow or tonight, if you're stuck scrolling endless videos, try counting. 1, 2, 3, plop. A faulty faucet's drip might be your free ticket to Oruk's dreamland, where deep sleep needs no spa playlist, just patience to hear the earth's monotone tale. The morning city sun taps gently on double-paned windows, reflecting your groggy stretch as you graze the phone's screen, swiping notifications, then frowning when the thermostat insists 23 degrees is ideal despite the AC's all-night grind. The fluffy duvet, crisp and dry, gets flung aside, revealing a 600-thread-count cotton sheet smooth as a lake, yet you're faintly irked. Why still warm? It feels worlds apart from Oruk, the hunter sleeping in a cave with no thermostat, no Egyptian cotton. But rewind time's map, and a fine thread links Manhattan's central heating to the hand-stoked fire on the icy step. Picture it. A double-layered buffalo hide, fur inward, greasy yellow-brown fat wafting a rich, singed scent. A palm-sized fire, ash packed a finger's depth. Night wind hissing through stone cracks, rebuffed by a warm glow, sighing as it slinks away. That was the Ice Age's sleekest comfort package. No skip intro, no sponsored segment, just a survival deal. Keep the flame alive, and your brain rewards you with unbroken dreams. Let it die, and the survival clock ticks red. Yet from that minimal kit, a legacy's seed quietly sprouted. First, technology. The wax-fat hide was the prototype for every waterproof, insulated, odor-blocking membrane hyped on LED outdoor billboards. The first Gore-Tex designer, spinning PTFE into a gossamer film, unknowingly cosplayed buffalo fat, the idea's DNA already copied and pasted. Second, mythology. From flickering flames and cave wall shadows, tales of white owl, white bear, and snow vortex were retold like late-night podcasts, nurturing imagination so humans didn't just eat, sleep, shiver, but dreamed. And from dreams, they drew, tracked star orbits, forged better spears. Third, most vital, community. Huddled around a tiny fire, they learned to share wind, split snow, pass flint, creating a shared account labeled tribe. Who tended fire, stood watch, told stories, carved murals. Each role bore an invisible essential tag, binding them tighter than any birch tar glue. Fast forward. Rush hour subway. You, in a triple-layer raincoat, stainless steel thermos coffee in hand, scowl as the train lags 3 minutes. Overhead, ventilation fans hum moist air, a sound not far from Oryx's cave ice cracking, just faster, louder. Fluorescent lights cast a buttery glow on concrete ledges, faintly echoing ancient embers, though swapped bulbs never match Ash's rosy warmth. Escalators creak, phones ping, intercoms blare. You think, too noisy. But mute those sounds. What's left? The subway turns concrete cave. Rails clank as metal flexes. AC drips plop, plop. Tunnel drafts howl like tail-end storms. The audio script's old, only the surface materials swapped. You flip your evening lamp switch. A 2700K LED glows, its orange hue a nod to ember-red ash. Tap the heater, and warm air puffs, smelling of new plastic instead of charred fat. But the mission holds. Stabilize body heat, soothe nerves. Each switch flick reenacts Oryx's first flint strike, outsourced to capacitors and circuits. And like Oryx, you tell stories, not with high drums, but texts or Instagram stories. Yet the mechanics mirror. Repeat, emphasize, add details, pack memories, hand them to another's brain, ensuring collective recall against time's erosion. Between that icy trek and rail commute lie countless slow upgrades, utterly human. Thermoses, fitted jackets, memory foam, hydronic floors. Each riffs on hide plus fire, jazzed up with silicone, titanium, firmware. Slap innovation stickers on them, and you're not wrong. But the beta ran 20,000 years ago with a greasy hide and smoldering coals. History looks dull, no jump-cut transitions, but its dogged monotony, birch tar filters, hide circles, dripping water, racked enough views to fund the skyscraper beaming light outside your window. Suddenly, the thermostat's 23 degrees C feels less irksome. It's not a power bill thief. It's a digitized echo of the just warm enough to not freeze Oryx gauged with his forearm's skin. Grumbling at a noisy AC? Picture wind screaming through cave cracks, stinging ears. Grousing over a shower 1 degree cooler? Recall ice drops freezing on a hunter's beard, clinking to stone. This isn't to guilt-trip comfort, but to flip your subway pass's underside. Every convenience bears a flintstone watermark, missed by eyes dazzled by LEDs. Before hitting Do Not Disturb, try this. Pause videos. Let the AC fan hum. Close your eyes, hand on chest, count 3 heartbeats per fan cycle. After a few dozen, the hum turns ancient north wind, bedside lamp to ember glow, sheets to hide, and you, on floor 18 of a glass tower, almost hear white owl's wings flapping down the hall. A crack in your heart opens, inviting the first snow-soft footprint from 20,000 years ago into your dreams. Breathe slow. History's tucking your blanket, whispering, sleep. The legacy's got tonight's watch.